people think that it's the labels taking advantage of the artist. It's the managers taking advantage of the artist. But the artist is actually taking advantage of the manager.
But just a lot of us aren't ready. I see it with producers all the time, quitting their job to make music. And then you go from, I'm going to do this to, oh, I just want a paycheck. What's going down? It's the At Odds podcast. We do have changes coming soon, but we are still at odds. And one thing that's not changing is the fact that you can get 3 months of free music distribution right now if you go to tolost.com and use the code at odds. I've been talking to a lot of artists lately who have just music stacking up. And for whatever reason, they just don't have a distributor account because they don't want to pay for it. So I'm just telling them, use at odds, get 3 months, upload as much music as you can in a 3-month period. And then if you like it, continue. If not, then don't continue, but your music is still on those platforms until you choose to take it down. How are the two of you feeling today?
I'll let Aaron go first. Aaron, how are you feeling?
It's been an interesting day, but I'm all right. I'm grateful.
Nice. I'm feeling good. There's a lot going on this week. It's BET weekend, so I got to hit a couple of events tonight. I feel like that's one of the things that Big Ja has to change. I feel like we got to get outside a little more because him and I are both kind of homebodies. We might go somewhere, but we'll leave hella fast. Well, actually, he won't leave. He goes out. He'll stay out. But he doesn't really go to the events that I think we need to be at. So we're going to hit a couple of those events this week. The Lesbian Homie is selling well. It's doing well. I do have a quick rant about data because I know that a lot of creators think that data doesn't matter, or, you just have to create great content. And sometimes that works, just putting out great content and being consistent. But if you look at the data behind what you're doing and you make some adjustments accordingly, you can make your content go that much further. And that's what I've been seeing with a lot of the content that we've been putting out that's associated with the Lesbian Homie, because we've been posting a shitload of reels, a shitload of YouTube shorts, TikTok, and things performing differently on each platform, and we're making small adjustments, and we're seeing that reflected in the sales of the show. So we should probably do a whole deeper dive about analytics. We're going to do that on Tolost. Like on Tolost, you have access to advanced analytics, and I don't think many artists are taking advantage of like what they have access to. So
no.
I'm going to do a couple videos of just some certain data points that you have access to via Tolost that you're probably not going to get anywhere else, that might be helpful, with some decision making going forward. I'll have those videos in the coming weeks. Well,
and a lot of artists just aren't even optimizing their various pages for data collection.
Yeah.
It used to be, I think it's more prevalent now that almost every type of social media account has analytics except Twitter, because Elon's whole ass made it so that you have to pay for the analytics. If you don't have a premium whatever account, if you don't have the Elon Musk bootlicking account, then you can't, whatever, you don't get access to that. But I had a consultation with a producer the other day whose beats went viral years ago, and he was getting millions and millions and millions of views, and he had free tag downloads enabled, but it was download in exchange for a follow. Had it been for an email, he would have owned tens of thousands of emails that he could have been remarketing to. So that was part of the consultation, just trying to salvage the email data that we could. And thankfully the customer data is salvageable, which is important. But you gotta imagine, say there were 10,000, and that's probably a conservative estimate, 10,000 emails of free downloaders. If you can convert just 3% of them into customers, think about that potential. So yeah, it matters.
This is why you pay for consultations. And going back to that customer acquisition cost, which is what we talked about with Brandon last week, that's what most salespeople spend the majority of their money on. They'll do traffic ads, but then they do conversion ads because they're looking for customer acquisition, and not just salespeople, like the ones who are like, you got to buy my course. It's anybody selling anything. It's about customer acquisition. or data acquisition. You're selling one of the two. So, and then for the producer, hopefully you're listening to this episode. If you had 10,000 emails, you can also now market to other producers like, hey, if you'd like to get in my monthly email pool, it costs this much. So now you could either have a subscription or you could have a one-off service to where you can send out beats for other producers. If you have 10,000 people on your mailing list, I'll even tell people this, that's how we make more money for our events and things like that. I have about 14,000 emails of millennials and then a handful of Gen Z across the Southeast. And so when people want to market their stuff, they'll come to us and say, how much does it cost to get on your mailing list? If it aligns with what my audience base wants, we'll do it. So if an e-blast costs a certain thing, if all of the copy is yours, it costs another thing. If you want us to host an event with you, it costs another thing. So don't just think about like your data from a place of vanity metrics. Data is really what helps you make more money and more sales. So this is a really good point, Dame. I used to, when I was a manager, I had all sorts of apps that people didn't know that I would spend my time on and money, because there's a lot of free stuff and there's a lot of low cost stuff. You don't have to be on chart metrics, but there are a lot of really incredible insights that you can get that can really help your business. So that's a very solid point.
Yeah, and I know you guys just talked primarily about emails, and emails, obviously are very powerful. Actually, Tulos is embedding a tool within the platform called, I think we're calling it Fan Blaster, because you can already use Feature FM links within Tulos. Tulos will generate a Feature FM link, so you're already capturing emails. So you're going to be able to send emails to all of those fans within the Tulos platform in the very near future. But, data goes way beyond like just emails, right? Like if you look at the Tulos advanced analytics, you can get access to like the percentage of your streams that are fraudulent. You can get access to what types of devices are using or streaming your music. So if somebody's using an iPhone versus a Samsung or whatever, or Google, there's so much information that people don't even know is there. So that's why we are going to have to create some more assets to educate exactly what's in the advanced analytics platform, because there's, it'll show you like when most people are like stop listening to your song. Like there's a bunch of stuff in there. So we have to do a better job educating even the people that already use Tulos, like what exactly you can do with it, because I think you can start making so much smarter decisions creatively or just business-wise.
How can y'all tell what's a fraudulent stream? And then if you know it's a fraudulent stream, are y'all working to like eradicate those or what? Because I'm assuming if it's fraudulent, you still have to pay out on it until you can like eliminate it, right?
Yeah, well, we don't. Well, the thing is Tulos has a very, very, relative to other distributors, we have a very, very small percentage of fraudulent streams. And that's primarily because of what you have to do to sign up. You have to, your ID, like that whole system prevents a lot of fraudulent streams. And that's probably the biggest reason why we have the lowest number. But, what was that came out too long ago? Like we're starting to get dinged, or distributors are starting to have to pay for fraudulent streams. So it's in our best interest to keep it to a minimum. So yeah, but I know we have other topics to talk about today, but we should probably do a whole nother session just about like data and different case studies on how data is used. Because even this past week, I noticed that there was certain messaging that was working well with the lesbian homie sales. And once I saw that messaging was working well, because it was on a single post on our YouTube community, it was a picture post. I was like, man, we need to double down on this messaging. And then we used that same messaging on Instagram. That post got like 25,000 likes, and then sales just went crazy for a day. We had our biggest day ever.
I saw it, and then that's what made me get on y'all's live. Like it was genius. Even the way that it specifically, the flow of it was like, it just piqued curiosity. Like, yeah, y'all are killing it over there. Shout out to you, Dave.
I appreciate it. But what we did have queued up today, and people think that a lot of times when I rant, it's just based off my experience with Funk Volume. Like, yeah, that could be some of it. But I've been in this game longer than obviously Funk Volume existed, and I've seen things time and time again. Still here at Tulos, I'm seeing how artists move. And basically what I wanted to talk about was, normally, people think that it's the labels taking advantage of the artists. It's the managers taking advantage of the artists. And I'm not even going to say it's 50-50. I don't know what the percentage is. All I know that it happens a ton this day and age where the artist is actually taking advantage of the manager, right? And I think it's because, into being independent is a little cooler now. So artists are building their own teams, right? So they're building their own teams. There's really no label involved. And now, the deals that artists are working out with managers, or they're just cutting managers, they're just doing a lot of shady things, in my opinion. And I think some of it is people are shady. Some of it is a lack of education. And then the other piece may just be paranoia. I don't know if there's another reason why artists, are trying to take advantage of managers these days, but any more buckets that we need to put in there? So
no, but to answer your question, I think it's because most artists, as most people have no experience and therefore really no business jumping into the music business, which is musical entrepreneurship. And that's something that we don't emphasize enough because people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk. Everyone loves to glorify opening up a small business until the expenses come, until reality sets in, and then they're back to being an employee. And it's like, that's fine. I mean, I think if you want to learn and prepare and really get ready for that transition, absolutely great. And that's why I put out the resources I do, but like I see it with producers all the time, quitting their job to make music. And then you go from, I'm going to do this to, oh, I just want a paycheck. And it's like, look, I get it. I went through the one way I just want to pay. I still go through that. My thing is more like, I want health insurance. This shit is too expensive, because it is. But I made that choice, so I have to stand on it. But just a lot of us aren't ready. I don't know. It's like we think like toddlers, where it's just like, oh, yeah, I want to be a rock star. Sign me up. Cool. I got a manager. Great. Where's my check? And then when the reality sets in, they lash out. When it's like, hey, you got to do some work. What? Oh, so I'm supposed to be your slave now? Like, no, actually, I only make 15 to 20% of what you make. So I'm your employee, technically. I'm just telling you what you need to do so we can both make some kind of money here. I guess I shouldn't call a manager an employee of an artist, but in some scenarios, yes. In some scenarios, partners. In some scenarios, independent contractors. But a lot of times when things go sour and it's decidedly the artist's fault, it's because they're treating the manager as an employee and simultaneously as a master or as an overlord. And it doesn't make sense, but that's kind of the insanity of the situation, where someone will hold two opposing opinions of the same thing simultaneously and then act out on that insanity.
Yeah. Well, I get it to a certain extent. Like if an artist, you're kind of grinding it out, you're building things on your own, and you come to a certain point where you feel like you might be ready to bring someone in, but you're hesitant because you've heard all these stories of like bad actors, so you might be a little bit paranoid, and you're not really making that much money yourself, so even that 15% is really going to eat into what you're able to do. So I get why there's some hesitancy, but Aaron, how would you like artists to look at it? Like if they're at a point where they feel like they potentially could bring on a manager?
I like them to look at it as they're bringing on a business partner, because I think that, I just don't like management structure at all anymore. I didn't like it when I first got into it. I didn't feel like I had enough leverage. And then as I gained more leverage, And I was like, this is what I want everybody to be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then 6 months later, that's what I kept going through, like artists just renegotiating their deal. And by the time I was over it solo, I was in a partnership for it. So then my business partner was like, well, we could concede a little bit because because we would make our money other ways, but I don't think like that anymore. It doesn't matter if I'm making my money other ways, and it doesn't matter if I'm making my money other ways with you. If I'm contributing to your bottom line increasing from a lot of different places, I want to eat in all those different places. So I want to be seen as a business partner. I want to be an equity partner, and not just a business partner. We say we're business partners, but I'm still getting, if I'm getting paid after the artist reasonable net, I'm definitely a business partner now, because that means that you're taking out expenses before you pay me. So I would want to be a business partner, and we don't have to be 50-50 equity partners, especially if you're putting up all of the money. But a lot of times managers will put up their own money and some money and a reasonable spend. And so, I want to be an equity partner, and I want to be seen as such. Yes, we can have bylaws and agreements like this is your career and your your creativity. So there's certain things that you're going to get the final say on. But if you get to be the chief creative, I want to be the chief business person, which means if it's better for business and I'm opting to do it, you can't sabotage because you don't feel like it. And I think that managers, we get into seeing potential instead of seeing what's really in front of us. And that kind of obligates us to being tied to a sinking ship, and that doesn't work. And every artist thinks that they have this incredible business sense, or they don't think they do. But then the more they listen to us, they hear a bite from a podcast that we do, and they'll hear something that we say in a meeting, and suddenly they think they have the same understanding as us. While you're over there perfecting your art and learning how to create and record yourself, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm out in the streets, I'm learning people, meeting people, and I'm studying as well. So I want to be respected as somebody who is an expert in my field the same way that I respect you as an expert in your field, whatever level that we're on, so that's how I see it.
And flip this around though, because we're definitely not saying that artists should just be out here giving equity in their business to any and everyone. I think that's a very crucial decision that should be thought long and hard about. That's something very serious if you're going to let somebody in on the equity structure of your business. If you were an artist, what should that manager need to prove or show before that's even a conversation for you? And Payne, you can answer the same thing as an artist. If you're putting equity on the table, what must that manager prove or show before that's even part of the conversation?
In my opinion, I think management is just dated the way that it is. So I think you need an assistant or you need a business partner. So I think that either they came in as an assistant and proved their relevance to the business and ability to grow it and hone it. And I'm not saying assistant from a lowly perspective. I'm saying a get shit done perspective. They're in the day to day, they're uploading, they're answering emails, all of that type of stuff. And helping to guide your decision making and making sure you're on track with the business. And then and that's how I started. When I started, I was really just a glorified assistant being called a manager for a percent, but they weren't making any money. So for me, the reason I say an assistant, because you need to already be in the mode of paying me. And then from there, after I prove not only that I'm trustworthy, but that I'm bringing acumen and business acumen to your business, but an understanding of your brand and your needs. And then for me, language. If we speak the same language, or I can speak your language and then translate that to the world, that is a massive, massive, massive asset that most people don't understand. It doesn't matter if somebody is a high level manager and they've done all these deals, if they don't understand you and where you're going and can't translate that to the world, you'll be sat on a roster of a major manager and not see any motion. And I've seen that happen a million times. I've seen bigger artists sign with bigger managers, and me and my artists were rocking, and we just kept going, and they was benched. It's almost like signing to the wrong label. So I think it depends on what your needs are. But one of my mentors used to say, inspect what you expect. You need to know what your expectations are, and those will evolve and grow. But you need to have a list. Like, I need somebody who sold out for me or who really rocks with my brand. I need somebody who can help me build a brand. I need somebody who's studying and working. And then I think on the same side, young managers, you need to know what you expect out of an artist. If you are outworking them, then you should not be managing them. You're just putting you could stay around for a little bit for some experience maybe, but you're going to end up getting burned. I was outworking most of the people that I worked with for the first 7 to 8 years of my career. And then when I started working with other people, it wasn't about outworking. It was about reverencing each other. And I really reverenced who they were and loved who they were and cared about them. And they didn't for me. I'm not asking you to build my career, but I'm asking you to think about me and your purview when I'm spending my whole time building your career,
Yeah, I think that B word is important, which is building. I mean, what are we creating together? If we're creating something together, then I should absolutely have equity. If not, then I think it's more nuanced, and then we kind of go back to the classic commission-based model, even though I think that could use updating to make it fairer for the manager. But yeah, I mean, I've been in situations. I was in a situation where the only artist I managed, I was building every aspect of that artist's career, and it was still a fight just to get the equity that I was legally entitled to as a music creator, as a songwriter, not even as a manager with a contract that said I got a certain flat rate on commission, because that wasn't even the priority. The priority was building. And so to me, that was a more clear-cut case of what Dame's talking about, of the artist taking advantage of the manager. I think it's quite easy at this level, at the average manager-artist relationship level, for the artist to take advantage of the manager and not vice versa, because most artists at that stage aren't making enough money for the manager to even take advantage of. If we're talking about the infamous managers that everyone has something negative to say about, like the Scooter Browns, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being played with. I'm talking about the average person in the music business, aspiring artist who's getting paid $150 for a show. Those are the situations where usually the artist is expecting the manager to handle everything. Anytime I talk to an artist, I had to block this guy. I block a lot of people, but he was just ranting in my inbox about how he needed a manager. He had 3 followers. He was just like, I just need a manager. I just feel like I need someone to take me to the next level. Like, bitch, you know what that entails? You have 3 fucking followers. So you want a manager who handles your social media strategy, handles your content management strategy, uploads everything for you, probably edits everything for you, probably creates and writes and brainstorms everything for you. That's an entire job in and of itself. And then on top of that, you want someone to handle your business. You want someone to be your assistant. You want someone to be your booking agent. You want someone to be your lawyer. You want someone to be your promo team. You want someone to manage a street team. You want someone to manage data collection. And realistically, if you're an artist at that level, you probably don't even know that you need all these things, but you're expecting so much.
Create streams of income.
And create streams of income because you have none. So how the fuck does it make sense for me to come to you and say, hey, I'm making 0. I need you to make me $100,000 so I can give you 15% of that.
Yeah.
See how crazy that sounds? Or I'm making $20,000. I need you to help me accelerate this. And you go to 40,000 and people are like, man, I feel like there's not enough going on. This was bound to happen. No, this was bound to happen. Why do I have to pay you? I was already making money. Like, let's be for real. Do you know?
And this is why.
Why do I have to give you a portion of the 40,000? Can I just give you a portion of the 20? Like, Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could tell
yeah.
you crazy stories.
Artists, manage yourself for no other reason than to just understand, one, what you need in a manager, and two, what it actually takes to be a manager. That's why I tell artists, no, it's not necessary for you to have something to manage to get a manager. I think as a general rule, you should, just because if you're overwhelmed, you see the value in bringing someone else on. If you're just sitting back like this, I'm not making shit, you don't really know anything that a manager does. You have no idea. And then we have Dame situations where someone convinces a legion of 100,000 slack-jawed morons that a manager doesn't do anything but sit back and dig in the artist's pockets, when the artist is actually the one generating all the revenue, even though the artist didn't generate that level of revenue prior to the manager signing on.
Yeah, I think it's super important for every artist to really understand, whether it's a manager or an assistant, like exactly what they're doing and exactly how that fits and impacts the business. Right. And never forget it, because it's easy to forget over time, because, you might start working with that person where that's the only person you had. And maybe now that you've, grown a little bit, you forget all of that sweat equity and all of that hard work that gets put in. So it's really important that you understand what the people are doing for you. And it's really important that, as you're on social media, people are gassing you up, telling you how great your music is, how much you've changed their life. And it's that goes to a lot of these artists' head, where they start to think that, oh, it's my music. Why am I getting all these comments? Because everybody's here for me. They're here for me. So, everybody else is probably replaceable. Social media has really fed a lot of egos, and it's destroyed the business relationships, because the artist starts to drift away from reality in terms of their business. And it sucks. But the reason I started the Music Entrepreneur Club is partly because you can make the right decisions, but it's partly to better understand the different players and the different things you'll need to do from a business perspective to start getting some traction. If you don't know that, then you're probably going to misvalue the people that are on your team, or just think that everybody is plug and play, right? So it's super important to understand the business so that you can maintain healthy relationships and you can fairly compensate people that support you. It's the same thing with, and I posted this the other day, it's like, artists complain left and right about creating content, right? They don't want to create content. And then somebody might help them create the content, and then they barely want to compensate them for that. Like, you were just complaining about the content you got to create. Now you have somebody that's pumping out content for you that's really good at it, helping to grow your brand, and you're trying to nickel and dime them. They're always trying to pull back from what they're paying the people that are supporting them. They're always trying to lower the management percentage. And again, this is not just from my perspective. I want people to know that this just doesn't come from my experience. I literally had somebody in my office this week. We had the exact same experience in terms of coming to a deal with an artist about a particular project, and then that project starts doing well, and they want to somehow turn off the faucet at some point. It's like, no, we agreed to split this 70-30 or whatever. That means we have to split it 70-30 for the lifetime of that deal, whatever that was. You can't just decide at some random moment, oh, I think you've made enough money from this, I'm going to lower the percentage or just stop it altogether. Like, that's terrible business, and that's the wrong thing to do to people.
Yeah, I think when you tweeted this out, it's like you're coming from a pragmatic perspective of, again, talking to a lot of people, but also having experienced it. I think that if we sat and told all the experiences, people's minds would be blown. I've had time and time again where I sit down with an artist and I'm like, we're going to sign this deal like this. If you don't want to do that, then I'm out. And then they'll be like, oh, I'm not like anybody else that you've ever worked with. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, we're just going to sign the deal, right? So then we sign the deal, and then they turn into things that I have said, just slightly different language. And they don't even realize it, because it's like a villain arc that they all follow, right? And it may be motivated by different things, like you say, like, somebody, it may be greed, another person, maybe they have a kid or they get married or whatever, and it just changes up. So it's not all this like diabolical, ho, ho, ho. But it's like it turns into, let me push you out further. I no longer need you. It's a very toxic user mentality. And it's really, really bad for business because it's like in most business situations, you can't just hedge somebody out like that. You either have to pay severance or whatever. And I can't even, don't let me even get started on sunset clauses. But I think it's just important, like Payne said, for people to understand the business. But I also think it's important for you to understand your needs and like where the buck stops, you know? So like there's plenty of artists who rag on their managers and they leave and they go with somebody else. A lot of times, I won't say every time, but a lot of times they'll never talk about the hardship that they have to go through in that process. I know that pretty much everybody that I used to work with is either making less money or paying somebody more to handle what I was doing. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, or they're paying, like me and Brandon were talking last week. We're looking at most of the artists we used to work with circle back to our team. So they're hiring our digital strategist and our graphic designer, whereas it used to just come under the blanket of management fees. And they were like, well, why do y'all want to charge 10% more? I'm like, because you're getting this, like a ton of shit more, not just those two. Now they're paying whoever to manage or paying their spouse, which a lot of them are doing now, paying their spouse to, which I think is shout out to y'all if that works, but I don't think it's I think it's dope when couples work together. But anyways, they're either paying their spouse or they're paying a bunch of people to do a bunch of services and then still having to bear the weight and the burden of the management role, still having to answer the emails or follow up with their team to be like, hey, you probably shouldn't have said it like that, or telling their wife, no, do it like this. And at night they're talking through how to get a higher percentage when my booking company took care of that for you. When the merchandising people, I was going to the warehouse to make sure shit got finished and shipped out to you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yes, you probably are still going. And I'm not saying that you're not going to have a successful career, but the type of effort and the amount of sleep that you're using and the lack of range that your name has, you can only go as far as you can take you. You don't know how far I can take you because you don't know how deep my relationships go. So you don't know the amount of people who your name is never being heard by now by cutting off a good management relationship. So I think it's even more than just the transaction of monetary value. You're losing out on rest and energy that's being evoked. You may be missing out on industry trends. Like I'm always up on industry trends. You may be missing out on opportunities and relationships, or maybe you want to strike a deal with somebody and I have a relationship with them. So my percentage for you would have been better. You know what I'm saying? You never know. You could be an artist at a higher level and you could be working way harder than you have to leverage some of your popularity when you could have had just a good manager who was connected. So I think there's a lot of things. You got to be careful about what you're doing and saying to your manager, how you're valuing the people, and not just your manager, just people around you in general.
And I brought this up again. I don't, it's not about who does who the worst. I want everybody to be in healthy business relationships. I want everybody to be professional. I want you to communicate well. And it really just comes down to all of that and education, right? But I know that most people think it's the labels and managers because of the movies that we've seen. We've seen the NWA story, the TLC story. Like everybody from the outside looking in thinks it's the labels and the managers taking advantage of the artists. And that does happen. I'm not saying that it doesn't. However, again, with the rise of independence, there are more independent teams now than ever before. And what I'm seeing is the artist wanting to be CEO, right? Not understanding the business. And a reminder, that doesn't happen in the real world. There are no CEOs that don't understand the business that they're in, or no successful CEOs that don't understand the business that they're in. So just be mindful. Again, I'm not trying to come down on artists. I really want people to meet in the middle because I want to stop seeing people's potential get cut short. Like so many more of you can make it if you did it together, but you out here thinking that you're doing everything and you're messing up your team, and your team is what was driving things forward. So I actually have to cut for the next segment. I got to head out. But I know you.
It's a damn shame, Dame, because I have a bone to pick with you on this.
Oh, AO. We'll comment on it on the next. I'll watch this.
Okay.
I'll watch the segment and then we'll comment on it on the next episode.